Greetings from Washington, D.C. This is Peter Thomas, the NAAOP General Counsel. Well, the federal government remains open today. Congress passed in the wee hours of the morning a massive bill that creates a 2-year budget agreement, funds the federal government through March 23rd through a continuing resolution, and sets up an omnibus spending bill to be arrived at in the next 6 weeks to fund the federal government through the remainder of the fiscal year. With this massive bill was included a number of Medicare provisions, and one of those provisions directly impacts orthotics and prosthetics. The provision involves the clinical notes of the prosthetist and orthotist, and the statutory provision recognizes the relevance of those notes in the patient's medical file for determining medical necessity of any O&P claims. This issue arose and became a problem in 2011 when CMS issued what they called a Dear Physician letter that went out to all physicians and suppliers that ultimately stated that it is the physician's notes, not the prosthetist's, that determine medical necessity of O&P claims. And ultimately that led to a whole raft of Medicare denials for prosthetic care that wound up at this point in the ALJ hearing queue. Many of those claims have not yet received hearings, and many of those that have received hearings have continued to be denied because the ALJs have viewed that language as prohibiting them from even considering the clinical notes of the prosthetist and orthotist. We believe, NAAOP and many other O&P organizations believe that's absurd, that the prosthetist and orthotist are the professionals who are most in the position to recommend and suggest treatment alternatives for the physician to approve, and ultimately are in the best position for that type of patient care recommendation. So to ignore those records seemed completely inappropriate. So that's a big win. That's a big victory. I want to acknowledge AOPA's support and leadership in really driving this issue. AOPA and its consultants, as well as NAAOP, the O&P Alliance, the Amputee Coalition, and many other groups, including the ITEM Coalition, all rallied around this provision and supported its passage. There are 2 provisions that did not make it into the final bill, but we will live to fight another day. Those provisions involve redefining or clarifying congressional intent with respect to the definition of minimal self-adjustment as it relates to off-the-shelf orthotics. This is an issue that we must correct before CMS moves forward with competitive bidding of off-the-shelf orthotics, because under current regulations that CMS has issued, that definition is far too expansive and really does not comport with congressional intent. The second provision relates to BIPA Section 427, which, as many people know, would create a link between the qualifications of the supplier or practitioner of custom orthotics or custom fabricated prosthetics and the ability to bill the Medicare program for such care. We'll continue to work on both of those provisions over the course of the next weeks, months, and if necessary, years, although I hope it's much closer than that. We will meet in New Orleans at the Academy meeting to discuss strategy. We will also attend the O&P Policy Forum coming up in March. We encourage everyone to do all you can to get to Washington in March so we can continue to press this case for these 2 additional provisions. I can tell you that congressional staff is much more aware. There's a much more understanding and awareness level and support for those provisions than there was last year and there was the year before that. And it's just a matter of getting this across the finish line. We thank you very much for all your support in what you've done to reach out and encourage Congress to pass this provision. Thanks so much.